as we go to a close of the year and we have another year coming, there's a question I want to pose it to you. Do you want to change the way you think? Do you want to change the way you feel? Do you want to change the way you behave? Yes. If the answer is yes, welcome. I am Yusuf Shoholo, and today at our Mental Health Talk series, we are going to discuss and have tips for our mental health and well-being in the new year. You're welcome. Hola, karibuni sana. That's the Swahili of welcome. I am glad that you joined us, and I'm thankful that you are sharing that link right now to your friend as we get to get ourselves. You might have missed a lot, but this is important because you're going to have like a nutshell of everything this series has been about. It's about our mental health, and all that while we've been directing you, and I insist as of now you go through our social media links: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can go to our portal. You find the links here below. They'll be tagged. Read us, ask questions, engage us. You have testimonies, just share of how this mental series talk show series has been helpful to you and your community. And as you know, we have our mentor who has been with us from the beginning, GC Associate Director in the Health Ministries, Dr. Katia.
Hi, Yusuf. I can't believe we're coming to the end of the year. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. We're here at the end of the year.
Yes, we've gone through a tough year. Many of us struggling, but we are so glad that God has brought us to where we are. And we have learned a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. In fact, a lot has been changed from the series. I have learned a lot. I have shared with friends. There's a lot we have witnessed through the processes. We have new knowledge, I can say. New knowledge, new ways of doing things. And today is it. We sum it up and get ourselves equipped for the next year.
That's right. And we have some excellent people that are joining our conversation today. I am pleased to introduce them. I want to introduce, of course, many of you know already, Annie. Annie Vladovska is an art student in North Idaho College, and she lives in the U.S., but she is originally from Ukraine. So good to see you again, Annie. Good to have you. How have you been?
I've been really good, and yeah, I've been really good. Thank you so much.
You're excited about coming to the end of this year and joining 2022?
It feels surreal, but yes, it's 2022.
My goodness. Yes. And then I want to introduce you guys a wonderful friend, Dr. Helgi Johnson. And he actually is a psychiatrist. Hi, Helgi.
Hi.
He lives in Iceland and practices in this area of mental health there. But he also has been engaged with Youth Alive in the past and was a health ministries director for the Trans-European Division. And got to visit a lot of youth and young adults in a lot of the countries there as we were, talking about mental health, but also other issues. And so it's so good to have you with us, Helgi. Glad you can join us in this conversation.
Thank you.
So there you are, Yusuf. This is our panel for today.
Well, I would ask Annie to pray as we begin the discussion. Annie.
Yes. Dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful day, and please bless our discussion, be within us and upon us, and let this discussion be healthy and useful for young adults and maybe older people, for everyone who will be listening to us. And let us benefit from it and discover something within us. And thank you, Lord, for being with us all the time. Amen.
Amen. If I have to describe 2021, this past year, we had lots of jobs. A lot of people got unemployed. We had losses. Our loved one went, be it of COVID, be it of any associated issues. There was economic depression. There was not enough money. People went broke. And not people, I can even say I went broke. Families striving to get themselves back to their feet. A lot. And we even learned a lot of associated depression, anxiety through conspiracy theories. People have lost hope. People have lost their own self-esteem. And with that, it's been a tough year. There have been a lot of emotional and mental challenges, and without choosing if it's a young one, it's an adult, it's an old fellow. Everybody had a challenge. With all what we have learned as we prepare to enter in the new year, what have you learned? And this question will go to all of you. What have you learned about mental health risks during the crisis of pandemic? I would begin with Helgi. Begin with Dr. Helgi, and then come to Annie, and then to Katia. What have you guys learned throughout?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I've learned through this pandemic is that the young people were more vulnerable than I thought they would be. I thought in the beginning of the pandemic that the most challenged group would be middle-aged people who were losing their jobs, maybe men. But it seems that the young people, they were more challenged. And what we also learned was that the isolation was probably the biggest challenge. Even though we have the connection through social media and we have our smartphones with us everywhere, these things have, in a way, made it more difficult to have real conversations and real relationships. And when we all of a sudden were just confined to the four walls of our homes, that was a great challenge. And for many young people, they were starting, colleges or universities, or starting new jobs. And all of a sudden, they couldn't be part of that environment. They were just locked up in their homes. And the isolation was a big problem, and the loneliness. And we knew before the pandemic that loneliness is a great problem many places in the world. And the pandemic made a bad problem much worse.
Yes, wow. That is so true. My goodness, I couldn't agree more. I wonder, Annie, as Yusuf placed the question for us, is that what also you felt, or you have any other things that you learned along the way?
Yeah, I just want to say absolutely. I know some of my friends were just quitting school because they were uncertain of what it will be in 2021, 2022. Still are uncertain. And I have friends from different groups, and if you know the saying, if you combine all my friends, they all will do not have anything to talk about similar, because they are from different areas and departments. And some of my friends have only me as a friend, and some just don't have any friends because of isolation, because even social media seems to be a social media, which is not social media. It does help in some areas, but it doesn't really. And I've noticed that a lot of my peers were isolated emotionally and socially, and they just well, I don't want to hang out, I don't want to go out, I don't want to do something together because I just don't feel like. Which before, it seemed to me that young adults were more encouraged to go out and to do something together, to study together, or now it's kind of they're in their bubbles and they have their own life, and that's what they're about.
Yeah. Well, that resonates also with what I would say I have noticed, besides what Dr. Helge was mentioning about the loneliness. I think I underestimated in some ways the power of community and being together. And during this time, we could see that a lot of things were impacted by the fact, first, with the isolation months in the beginning, where we couldn't be together, and indeed loneliness just went even more. I, for instance, living on my own here, I was inside like many other single people who didn't have family inside the home. But there was also issues where in families that were together, if they had problems in relationships and there was abuse, those things went up even more. But for young adults especially, this idea of the school as a community and their friends as a community not being able to actually be together, we saw that online was not enough, and unfortunately that brought two things. First, as Annie, you're pointing out, it seems like they got into their devices, and I think we saw a huge increase on even more dependence on Instagram and TikTok and some of these other, social media, YouTube things. And so that became their new kind of connection, which is, as Dr. Helgi said, very superficial. It's not real. It's not real conversations. And that has brought a lot of kind of like time consumed in that and more isolation. And we have seen the results of increased depression and self-image issues among young girls, especially from Instagram and other social media elements. So there's a lot of negative things that have been compounded because the pandemic just made it worse. Not that they were not there, they were already issues, but it just made it worse. And the lack of that community being able to come together just exacerbated it even more. Well,
I just wanted to add something else that was important for me as a young adult, a physical touch. Living in a different country, and I know I love my parents and I love my friends, but being isolated and not being able to see face-to-face a person, not being to hug person, not being able to hug person.
Yes,
and hugs. Hugs are so important to me. I just cannot live hugs. And like yesterday, there was a girl in one of the meetings, and she was just, I thought she was fainting, but she was totally fine. She was just falling asleep. And I just lightly touched her in her back, and it kind of woke her up, and I offered my help. But those little things that just, whenever people still have bubbles, even before COVID or any pandemic, they had their bubbles, and they're just like, don't touch me because I don't like to be being touched. But the physical touch is still important, and just to offer help, it kind of connects us with people. So I thought we lost that during pandemic.
I think that's a very important point you're making. And when the pandemic started, I think we had certain ideas about how we would cope with it, but now we realize what we miss, and we realize what is really important. And social media, it's not a relationship platform. Social media is an online stalking device. It's very easy to watch what other people are doing, but we're not really interacting. Commenting on a picture is not a relationship thing. So I think it's a very important point you're raising, that being physically together, even being able to touch our loved ones, is very important. In the first months of the pandemic, we were isolating from each other. We didn't meet our parents, for instance, and our parents, they really missed that, being able to hug, and obviously we did as well. But the older generations, they really missed this relationship, and probably all of us. So I think it's important what you're saying.
Yes.
Speaking of physical touch, and this brings us from what we have been learning throughout the program, is we have learned that our bodies are interconnected as an individual, and then how we impact one another as a community. Now, given what we have seen, the negative impacts we have got, the loneliness, the isolation, the bonds breaking up, if people were together, some new habits came up, maybe someone was lonely, so they switched to some addiction of some other issues, some new tendencies and behaviors. as we go now to this new year, as we go to this new page, some people say new page, what are some personal choices that one can make to support better their mental health? And that is for them and for the people who are around them. And this is to Dr. Eji, and then we can go through all together.
I think there are many points we could make or point out in this regard, and probably nothing new, but we need to emphasize the ones we already know. I would like to divide it in two categories: a physical category and then the emotional, relational category. And I think we still need to take care of our bodies, because our mind is dependent on our body. The brain is part of the body. And we need to take care of our bodies with exercising. And that doesn't have to be running or bicycling or anything. You can just go out for a walk. Just have good shoes, get out. And being outside is very important. Breathing the fresh air, having the sunlight in your eyes, all of these things are important. It's also important to eat properly. And I really like the words of Michael Pollan, who wrote a book on diet. He came up with this very simple sentence after having gone through all kinds of studies and research on what's important regarding diet. He said, eat food, and then he just meant whole food, wholesome food, not the junk food, not the sweets, not all of that. Just eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. And I think with just these three things, we can go a long way. We need to abstain from the things that are harmful, like tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, all these drugs. We know it, but it is really important. And I think we often don't realize how bad it is for us, even in very small quantities. Sleep is probably one of the biggest factors where we can enhance our health. We need, on average, 8 hours of sleep a night. On average, here in the Western world, we sleep 6.5 hours. We are lacking, on average, 1.5 hours. And if we did nothing else but increase our sleep to a normal amount, that would be very beneficial for our health in general and mental health in particular. When it comes to the relational or psychological things we could do, I would like to point out one thing, and that is clear boundaries. Being able to set clear boundaries for ourselves and also for others. This is very important. Being able to say no when something is against our conscience. Don't go against your conscience. Being able to say no to someone who wants us to do something that we don't want is very important. And learning that early on in life is one of the most important things.
Excellent tips. I fully agree with that, and believe that being able to set those boundaries, as you said, can prevent us from having a lot of stress and also guilt, inappropriate guilt or guilt sometimes that can follow through. And also all these physical things that you mentioned, diet, rest, sleep or exercise. It's something that I found to be very helpful for me during this year, that I was not traveling a lot. I was home, so I could have a regular sleep schedule, could have a regular time for exercise daily, and be outside in the sunlight. But also I started to cook new recipes at home, time to cook. So a lot of people got into that. And So gardening, in the home, being active in the garden. So all those things were very helpful. And I think I wish to continue doing them in 2022, because I think that would be very helpful to continue managing things. But of course, many of us will have travel again, or others will have other kinds of work-related things to get into. But trying to keep on to some of these tips, I think, are so critical. And I don't know, Annie, how about you?
I'm absolutely agreeing with everything about the food and walks, and especially there's nice weather right now by where I live. But I also was thinking about when during the pandemic, majority of us were focused on our problems and ourselves. And for the young generation, I believe that we do not know yet how to invite friends over, how to make small dinners or lunch breaks or tea parties or something small and socializing, not like a social media, but actually socializing with our friends and acquaintances and building your relationships. And I think caring about others and asking what they need, what they want, and going out of way to provide something makes it actually the life better, because we're serving others, and it feels better because, oh, I did that. It just feels good.
I love that. In fact, I think that service, this is something we saw in this pandemic. A lot of older adults or even young people actually got out in their communities, and they tried to make a difference, whether they were, like building masks at home, like trying to sew masks in the beginning and give away, or whether they were bringing food together and having food drives, those kinds of service-oriented things in the community, I think is also a great way to cope, and something that we can, but of course, as you said, even relearning the skills of inviting people over and being together and talking and, just sharing, leaving your devices, electronic devices away, and having real conversations. I think that's so important.
I totally agree with you. And I think that's one of the problems with the pandemic and the isolation was this great focus we were able to have on ourselves and our problems instead of focusing on other people and their needs. And I think it's very important that we try to shift the focus a little bit towards what other people are needing. And another thing that I think is very important that we could try to do more of, and studies indicate that this is very beneficial for stress and depression and others, that's gratitude. Having maybe a little book that you write down 3 to 5 things every night that you're grateful for. These small things, they can be very beneficial and very important.
Excellent.
Well, speaking of COVID, and we had no control. Nobody said, okay, COVID, come in. So we have learned that there are some things we do not have control over them and cannot change circumstances. Now, for what is ahead of us, how can one deal and cope with the positive ways and do things that support their mental health or lives, and for others in this kind of scenarios where you have to wait, maybe it's a matter or it's a challenge you're going through? How do you cope? How do you heal through that? What might be the tips of one can do to cope this kind of scenario where you just have to wait? And this is anyone who get the answer can try.
I think in my own experience, when things happen that I have no control over, I found it important to deal with it with a certain degree of stoicism and serenity. I can't control things, and the most important thing for me has been to trust in God. Just know that things will be okay. I don't know how they will develop. I have no idea how they will impact my life in the end. but I just trust that God will provide, and God is there. And I think that has been the most important thing for me, just looking back at my own life, not just this past 1.5 years. I think this is the most important thing.
Well, Dr. Katya, how can one?
I actually want to hear what Annie has to say. Go ahead. Maybe Annie, can you go, and then I'll go after her.
Oh, I just agree. Just I agree with totally. It's trusting God. We'll never know what's going to happen. There'll be maybe another pandemic. There will be something else. But He knows better, and we might keep doing what we're doing. We try to improve every day and every year after pandemic. And I believe what we heard before, that trying to go on a walk with a friend and kind of talk and have conversations, something that is healing. Have conversations. It's so important to having conversations. For me, it is important.
Yeah, that is so critical. And for me, when I think about circumstances that I have no control, the very first thing is what Dr. Helgi said. It's just knowing that even though things may seem horrible, actually there's a bigger picture to everything that's happening. And when you understand that God, our Creator, is the one that knows the end from the beginning, and He is sustaining not only this world, but the whole universe. We are a tiny little, world in this humongous kind of universe. And God, knows exactly what's happening, and He allows things to happen for a purpose. And we are here only passing through. So that kind of thinking about that, and just allowing myself to believe that He knows best, and He will have me and us all, regardless of what happens, gives me peace and serenity. Doing the gratitude thing that Dr. Helgi was talking about, being grateful for the things that I have control over, that I have been blessed with, also is helpful for me in this sense of kind of dealing with things that I don't have control. And the serenity prayer is one that says exactly that. Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things that I can change, and or I can't change, and actually to do the things that I can, but also having the wisdom to know what is the difference between the two. There are things you accept patiently, knowing that God has control, but there are things that you can do sometimes. And so knowing what you do, we are able to do, and also other things that you just need to accept, brings serenity and peace. And so anyway, Yusuf, these are some of my thoughts on that.
Now time, I when I'm checking on time, I'm like, okay, time is up and we are just getting started. Throughout the series, if you would join and go through the series, there are a lot of helpful content that would help for those who are struggling with the mental and emotional issues right now. There is a lot of contents that will help, and resources that would help. And one of the things that we could say, of just a reminder, is knowing that there is God who has you covered, regardless of what you're going through. That through prayer, there's a session again about prayers. There's a lot about prayer, that when you pray and then you understand He's gonna answer, and when He does, you will see it. And that's where we get that peace. We can have the harmony as we go on coping and seeing what will reveal as time goes. But just a reminder, as tips as you begin the new year, please eat properly, eat well. If you can go to eat properly, eat well. That's one of the takeaways I had from the discussion. But also abstain for the things that are harmful. Don't go to marijuana, don't go to alcohol. And when we speak about harmful, we even speak about friends. Learn to say no, clear no to friends that might be a bad influence to you, might introduce bad things to you. And through that, have clear boundaries. like this is where I can go, this is no, and you have your reasons to it. But again, please sleep more. The social media, please have good time, manage your social medias. From our contest and discussion of the series, we've learned of how the tips, put notifications, shut down the system, uninstall even the app. Just have enough sleep, and that will be enough for your health. But exercise, get physically fit, do some exercise, and create a new hobby. You might be lonely, maybe you're in a place where you cannot mingle or you're isolated at some time. Please create a new hobby. Paint, draw. Dr. Katia did create new recipes. Do that, and that is one of the ways we can have some good tips of how we can have our well-beings together. But have gratitude. Be thankful in whatever God puts on your way. Accept and be thankful, even for the tiny thing. You wake up, you're okay. You had flu, it's gone. You had some headaches, you're okay. Say, God, thank you. I'm doing okay. And this is one of the things that I've learned from the discussion, that this will help you have a very happy and joyous journey in the new year. That's what I've learned on the takeaway, guys. Thank you, though. We are out of time, and just to close, I would like to ask Dr. Edge to pray.
Sure. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for all your blessings throughout these years. And even though there has been a challenge on the way, we know that you stand by our side and you will lead us through to the end. Dear Father, we thank that these series might be a blessing to all those that watch, and we pray that this might be one of the things that that might lead them to you, because you are the most important one. You're the most important person we may ever get to learn to know. And we are grateful for the fact that we have had the opportunity to be with you. Thank you for everything, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Amen. I just want to say thank you, guys. Thank you, team, for being here and sharing. I just have to add, one of the greatest mental tips for your coming year is from the prayer. Seek God, understand Him, and everything will have harmony in your life. May God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Always follow us on our social medias as tagged below. We have a portal. We have resources that will help you in whatever issues in the dimension of mental health. And of course, if you have time, you can go through our YouTube channel and have contents, other contents as we begin our year. You will see how you can get your self-esteem up, how you can abstain from hurting yourself. There's a lot of contents, how you can be productive. It's all about being productive. It's all about feeling good and being objective in life. May God bless you and have a wonderful year.